Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us here today. Following the lead of many other shows, this year's East LA Cape is going digital. The East Los Angeles Comic Book Art and Pop Culture Expo, or CAPE for short, was founded in 2016 by a group of pop culture and comic book fans who grew up in East LA. Headed by Peter J. Malini, who owns Nostalgic Books and Comics in San Diego, California, the show is dedicated to creating community and bringing together artists and vendors from our surrounding neighborhoods so that we can all enjoy the art that our community has to offer, and to connect you to independent artists so that you can support their work. This is our 15th episode of our Virtual Artist Alley, where we will be highlighting our community of artists and vendors. Javier Solorzano is a comic book creator from Bell Gardens, California. His work explores lucha libre and where it intersects with other forms of pop culture. His first comic book series, Luchisimo, debuted in 2017. His newest series, Super Lucha Cats, is about a team of lucha libre cats defending humanity from monsters and demonic forces. This series is set to debut this year. Thank you so much for joining us here today, Javier.
Thanks for inviting me. Really nice to talk to other comic book humans.
For sure, man. So something we always ask everyone to start off: how did you get into art?
How did I get into art? It's the tale as old as time, right? I started as a kid. Growing up, I hung out a lot with my cousin. He collected comics, and he sort of started showing me stuff like Spider-Man, the Max, Pit, Spawn, Batman, all that stuff. And growing up, I realized those were very similar to a lot of like the lucha libre wrestlers I was already watching on TV. And when my parents started seeing that I was showing an interest in it, my dad works as in a commissary for a restaurant chain. So he'd bring home giant sheets of butcher paper, and he'd hand me like these magic markers and Sharpies and tell me like, you can draw with using this. And so a lot of my early drawing was copying what I thought was the comic book style I would see Todd McFarlane or Jim Lee do on like Wildcats on these giant sheets of paper. And I was drawing comics about me and my pets, Ninja Turtles, Batman, El Santo, that kind of stuff. And as I got older, it just progressed from there, where I started taking classes when I could in high school, in college, and now doing it as a sort of passion project on the side.
Great. So what kind of services do you offer people, or what are you selling?
So if you visit right now I have an Etsy shop. If you visit there, you'll find that you can buy t-shirts with my artwork. A lot of my t-shirts are under the Lucha Cat sort of umbrella, which is me sort of doing a lot of remixes on like video game cover art that I grew up really thinking was just really cool, and remixing it with like my Lucha Libre cats. So I have stuff on there. So like the Lucha Cat, My City, which people seem to like a lot. But you can also find, I have stickers on there. I'm gonna start looking at getting some pins in there, and you can find my comic books on there. So right now, issues 1 and 2 of my Luchisimo series are on there. And very, very soon, I will launch the new comic book, Super Lucha Cats, which will hopefully make a big splash on there. We'll see how that goes.
That's real cool. So you said that when you were younger, you used to draw comics about your pets. You're still kind of doing that, right, with the Super Lucha Cats?
Yeah. Growing up, I had a little Chihuahua dog mix. Her name was Pequeña, and then later I had another dog named Chiquis and Babo. A lot of my early comic books were about them sort of saving the world in my neighborhood in ways that I thought was like what I thought was a threat back then, which was just like evil warlord shows up, evil wizard shows up, my dogs are gonna take care of the neighborhood. And now I have 2 cats. I have Coco Cat and Pizza Cat, and they're 11 and 5 years old. And I've sort of fallen back into that of writing stories about my pets, except now I'm sort of fusing that with like my love for lucha libre. So Super Lucha Cats is the end point for a lot of that stuff. So Super Lucha Cats is a team of 4 cats, and Coco and Pizza are based on my Coco and Pizza cats. And Coco's actually right here right now, but she's not gonna let me grab her. But I've always drawn inspiration from my life in that way, and for me, pets, because they're your best friends. As a kid, you tell your dog or your cat all your secrets that you're too embarrassed to share with your mom and your dad and your friends. And this just felt like a natural progression of what I was already doing. And it's hard for me to not get excited when the stories are dealing with, you know, my cats that I see every day at home now. And so that's sort of where this sort of came from. So it was just this, it sort of just felt like everything I've been doing for like the last 25, 26 years of my life have slowly just morphed into this thing that, looking back, I realized, oh, this was inevitable. This was always going to happen. Just a matter of when. And it just so happened to be the year of 2020 when everything else is sort of exploding and erupting around us.
Yeah, seriously. And I saw on your Facebook there's a little jingle to the promo. Is that original music?
Yeah. I'm actually really excited about that because that is I wanted to have a theme song for the comic book, mostly because a lot of the stuff I grew up watching as a kid, Ninja Turtles, Pokemon, Sailor Moon, they all had these amazing songs that as a kid I would video record it on a VHS tape and just replay the intro. I'd drive my mom nuts, but I was re-listening to like Captain Planet over and over again. And so I realized I want to have that. And the song was actually produced by a friend of mine who I've been friends with since the 5th grade. His name is Francisco Bárcena. He goes by Cisco 3000. And he's been making music since we were like in middle school. So I always knew I wanted to ask him to work on it with me. And the vocals were provided by a friend of mine that I went to college with. Her name is Annalise Nelson. And she heard the song and she was like, I'm in. She's a cat lover. So it just felt like everybody, again, it just felt like it was bound to happen. And when they told me that they were willing to do it, I said, all right, let's do it. And they wrote the lyrics, they produced the music, and they did the vocals. I had like one note for that whole thing, which was just, it was like a volume thing, but everything else in terms of the content, the beat, the tone, they nailed it. And that was something that I was really excited about because when I thought of the comic, I didn't think like it'll have a theme song, but the more I thought about it, I realized this makes sense. And it's gotten a really great response, and I'm forever grateful to them because they stepped in and they helped me out. It wasn't like I had to go chase them out. They were very generous with their time and their energy with that, which, again, I'm very fortunate. I feel very grateful to them for that. And hopefully we'll be releasing the full song when the book launches. So I'm very excited for that as well.
That's real cool. So we were talking about it a little bit. It seems like this whole thing is kind of inspired by cartoons you watched as a kid. So is that what you're going for as far as the book? Is it like an all ages, or is it like what's your ideal audience for this?
I would say the audience for Super Lucha Cats is going to end up being hopefully boys and girls. If they're old enough to watch things like Scooby-Doo, I think they would enjoy this book because it's gonna be very monster of the week. So the first issue, it's the cats dealing with vampires in East Los Angeles, right? We're gonna be visiting werewolves in probably Linwood. We're gonna be looking at La Llorona, La Chupacabras, all of these sort of mythical monsters and creatures. but placing them in the local neighborhoods that I grew up and were my old stomping grounds as a kid. It's not, I mean, I don't want to say it's going to be all ages because I don't know if werewolves as a thing are too scary for like a preschooler, right? But if you're watching something like Scooby-Doo, I think you would like Super Lucha Cats because it's the same sort of like scary, funny, but with a little bit of action tossed in.
I love that. The song, by the way, sounds super cool. It's exactly what you're saying. It sounds like a theme song. Like you listen to it and I was like, this is exactly what, like, it sounds like a theme song, like to those like 90s cartoons, you know. It's a really neat song. I can't wait for it to come out. I love that idea of the monsters of the week in your neighborhood. So what monster is like East LA and Boyle Heights gonna get?
So East LA, the first issue takes place in East LA. And that's going to be sort of where the vampires hang out. And the idea is to have every sort of neighborhood in the region have its monster, right? And I grew up in Bell Gardens, so for me, that is why the cats live in Bell Gardens. But growing up in Bell Gardens, you know, you don't just grow up in Bell Gardens. The same way that if you grow up in like Maywood, you're not just in Maywood. A lot of these neighborhoods, they're intersecting with each other all the time, from Alhambra all the way to like Linwood, Inglewood. The people in these neighborhoods are constantly going back and forth in between each other. And so I thought it would be really cool to have a series that visits all of these places. And we take a look at how these places are unique, but also share an experience together. And I'll go ahead and leak right now. The second issue is going to deal with werewolves. And they're going to be, right now it's looking like Linwood, but we're going to also be visiting places like Whittier, where we might be dealing with the undead. And what does that mean for the people in that area, right? What does it mean when you live within 5 minutes of vampires, maybe zombies, and like La Llorona, right? Is La Llorona going to be hanging out by like the riverbed, or is she going to be visiting a suburban neighborhood where the kids hang out? So I'm really excited for that part of it. Boyle Heights, I have a couple of ideas in my head about what's going to be lurking in there that I'm not yet, I don't want to put it out yet because I want to see where because Boyle Heights isn't set to come out too early in the series, but it's going to come out. But I'm going to go ahead and make you guys wait on that one a little bit.
That sounds really cool. So I'm just curious. So the Lucha Cats themselves are obviously like they're like humanoid animals.
Yeah.
Do they exist in like a human world, or is everyone like that?
So the premise of the series is we live in a world, it's our world, but there's monsters, right? There's monsters that come out at night, but most of us never see them. Why don't we ever see them? Because at night, this luchadora is fighting them the same way that like Blue Demon and El Santo fought mummies in those old Lucha Libre movies, right? So she, throughout her career, would fight these monsters at night, but now she's older, she's a widow, and one night she hears these meows outside while she's trying to sleep, and she opens the door, it's raining, and there's 4 kittens looking for shelter. And she puts them inside of a Lucha Libre mask to keep them warm. And there's a magical reaction there that over time leads to those cats growing to more than just cats. They're like children. And so she teaches them how to be luchadores. So she teaches them Lucha Libre, and the 4 of them specialize in a different part of Lucha Libre. So Coco, who's the oldest, she's a bit of a brawler. So like Stone Cold Steve Austin comes in, punches and kicks everything. Pizza Cat is more of a like aerial Rey Mysterio type of luchador. Nopal, who's like a big boy, he sort of takes on like this Andre the Giant sort of attack mode where he's just overpowering everybody. And then the smallest cat, Fresa, she's like a submission specialist. So like Bret Hart, Kurt Hennig putting these like submission moves on everybody. And the story is going to explore how they sort of learn to work together, and also what it means when you're a family that's a little untraditional. How you come together as a family and learn to like coexist. So they then inherit her responsibility of fighting these monsters when everybody's asleep, and sort of trying to remain a secret themselves.
So does it have a little bit of kind of like a Ninja Turtle thing where they kind of have to hide from people so people don't realize they're magic?
Yeah, Ninja Turtles was a big thing for me growing up. And this was sort of a way to like pay tribute to that. And I really always liked the idea of the hero who cannot come out and take credit for their work, right? They have to be completely selfless for this to work out, right? And so these cats have to like wrestle with that. They have to deal with doing a work that nobody's ever going to tell them good job for besides their mom. But that doesn't mean that there's people that don't know they're out there. And you'll see a little bit of that in the first issue with some of the side characters that start wondering like, well, what's going on here? Why are things suddenly different now? Why are the vampires disappearing? Why are the werewolves like not rampaging like they were before? There's going to be that tension there, and that's something that I'm really excited to explore, because cats in general can be kind of fickle creatures, right? You know, anybody who's met a cat has probably tried to pet a cat that did not want anything to do with them. And so I think that's really a fun little dynamic for them to play around with.
That's really cool, man. So by the time this comes out, you'll have had your panel with the Latino Expo about luchadors. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the Latino Comic Expo, we always try to do something revolving around lucha libre. And a lot of times we have, so like Keith Rainbow a lot of times does really good like retrospectives on like lucha libre cinema. And this year we're also doing a panel where we talk to artists making lucha libre comics. So this year we had Rafael Navarro, who did El Sonámbulo. We had Jay Gonzo, creator of La Mano del Destino. We had Jandro Gamboa, who did Monty Gomez's The Luchador. And we had Carlo A. Lopez, who did The Mighty Luchador. And it's really fun talking to those guys because they're all dealing with lucha libre, but they're all very different books. Lucha libre can be a lot of things. And when you talk to these guys, you realize everybody gets something different from lucha libre. In the past, we've had creators from Chile come in and talk to us. We've also had John Narcomi talk to us about his series Cholo Libre, which merges lucha libre with like, you know, that like Southern California Cholo culture, which again, like it's a very unique look at what lucha libre can be. And you'd be surprised what these conversations bring out. I mean, we've had conversations where lucha libre becomes this analogy for like working class uprisings, for the way that punk rock shapes social views for the disadvantaged. And you realize, well, lucha libre is not just these sci-fi movies from the 60s. It's this incredible piece of culture that migrated to Mexico at the same time that huge droves of people were also migrating to Mexico. And how do those things mirror each other? And I always tell people lucha libre can be very educational. And this panel is an attempt to shine a light on the creators that are now leading what lucha libre is evolving into, which is not just wrestling in movies, but also these really unique comic books that are all very different and tackling different parts of American and Latino American culture. And I think people are really going to like it. We always have a great talk with it, and I can talk to those guys for hours and it won't get old. So I hope that when people watch it, they can turn around and not just look at the existing Lucha Libre media, but like go and look at those creators, follow them on Instagram, look at them on Twitter and Facebook, and check out their work, because it's really cool.
That's awesome. So this is something that we've been kind of asking everybody, and it's, how has the pandemic or the quarantine affected you? How has it affected your work? We are finding that, you know, the stay-at-home orders have made a couple of people more productive, some people less productive, some people more focused on self-care, some people, you know, have found it as a welcomed time to focus. How has it affected your productivity and creativity?
So the pandemic really shifted a lot of stuff for me this year. I wanted to have Super Lucha Cats out in time for East LA Cape. And when this happened, I realized you go through those emotions where it's sort of the 7 stages of grief. And for me, that was dealing with not being able to see my friends at these shows, not being able to talk to you guys in person. But I also recognize that it's the needed step, right? Everybody's health is more important. But in terms of productivity for me, I didn't really get super hyper productive. It took a lot of adjusting for me, because I'm one of those people where if I'm not constantly working, I feel really guilty about it. And that's not the most healthy way to approach your work. You should be able to work on your craft because you enjoy doing it, not because you want to tie it to your worth as a person, right? So it took a lot of just coming to terms with being okay to take time for myself to reflect and take my mind off of work and stress, and give my brain room to like forgive myself for being upset, right? And I think a lot of people are dealing with that in different ways. But I also think that a huge chunk of my quarantine experience has been seeing everybody's shift in terms of their awareness for social justice. We clearly had a really rough summer in terms of what's happening in our communities, in terms of just violence against minorities, violence against LGBTQ people, Black, brown. And nobody likes seeing those things, but it's the silver lining has been seeing a lot of fellow creators using their craft to amplify messages that weren't getting out before. So seeing artists either see to their platform or creating new work to shine a light on people who have been talking about this for 15, 20, 30 years, right? And that's been really cool, because I'm seeing people who were unaware now be aware and realizing we have work to do as a community, we have work to do as a people, and we owe it not just to ourselves, but to our neighbors, right? We're learning now that things like health are not an individual thing. Health is a community project for everybody. And seeing everybody sort of, I don't want to say come to terms with that, but sort of realizing that and learning from that has been the silver lining in all this. Am I upset that it took a pandemic and all this violence for us to get there? Of course, but I'm not going to lie and say that I'm not happy that I'm seeing that, because I am. I am very happy to see people sort of have an awakening about being okay to talk about these things. Because I know in talking to these people in private, they feel a certain way, but you never, I'm not gonna say never, but you oftentimes don't feel comfortable talking about these things. You don't wanna rock the boat too much. And now we're realizing some of this stuff's important. We need to talk about this stuff. And I think we're gonna be better for it in 2 or 3 years. When we look back, we're gonna be really glad that we came to terms with a lot of these things that were not okay before. And hopefully we'll work on correcting it, at least for the rest of my life, because it's going to take some work. But that part has been very, very uplifting. It's been very motivating and encouraging to see everybody doing that.
So where can people find you online?
So you could find me on social media. I'm pretty active on Instagram if you look up Lucha Cat. I'm on Twitter at Lucha Cat. I have a website, luchacat.com, which will likely be getting a bit of a facelift once the book launches. And I have an online store. If you go to luchacat.etsy.com, you can find all my shirts and all that stuff on there. And yeah, I'm on Facebook too, Lucha Cat. Pretty much Lucha Cat everywhere. If you Google Lucha Cat, I think I've done a pretty decent job of taking over that front page.
I love what you were saying about like you're glad that everyone is kind of coming to terms with this. And yeah, unfortunately it took a pandemic, but you know, the boat must be rocketh. Do you feel that some of this might start infiltrating into the adventures of the Lucha Cats?
Yes, for sure. I realized that as I was finishing the first book, I realized going forward, it's going to have to reflect some of these realities for us. Because it's not going to be an overtly political book by any means, but I also don't want it to be tone deaf. A lot of the works that I grew up watching, TV shows, comics, reflected a lot of the values that I now hold dear to my heart. And I hope that Super Lucha Cat does the same thing for a younger audience now, which is teaching them even basic things like compassion, empathy, because I think we really need that right now, especially when you're dealing with your actions potentially affecting somebody else's long-term health. And that's, it takes some adjusting for sure, but that's our job as creators. We have to adjust. We have to roll with the punches and reflect the world that's looking back at us in some way, shape, or form. Because it gives the people after us a means to look back and look at where we came from, right? The same way that my generation looked back, and even my parents' generation looking like at protest songs from like the 60s and 70s, right? It gives us a window into what it used to be like and how far we've come, hopefully, right? Hopefully. But getting there requires that work. It requires artists and creators to play an active role in that conversation and providing a means for people to sort of, chew on these topics a little bit and reflect on them.
And what better way to teach the next generation than to use cats?
Oh, of course. I mean...
Well, Javier, it's been so much fun. Thank you so much for sitting down with us today. I will be putting up your links at the end of this interview so that everyone knows how to find you. And we really appreciate it. It's been fun. And good luck with your cats.
Well, thank you guys so much for having me on. And I just want to say the work you guys are doing by doing these online conversations with creators, it's really important. It's really important to not let this stuff disappear when we can't do it in person. So thank you guys for doing this, because I know even my nieces and nephews, they're watching this. They're looking at guys like Javier Hernandez talking to you guys, Mark El Dude talking to you guys. And it's important work. So thank you guys for doing it.
Well, thank you for that. We really appreciate it. And this is definitely a passion project. So we're super glad that people are enjoying it.
Thanks, guys.